Hello and welcome to Podtoid. I'm CJ.
I'm free. I am not man. A number.
I'm Dan.
I'm Charlotte.
I'm Occams.
And this is episode 444. Welcome to the show, everyone. We have a good show prepared for you today. We're going to be talking a little bit about Elder Scrolls, some Detroit's Become Human, and a little bit later, we're going to be looking at the Tony Hawk remakes that were announced earlier this week. Dan, it is nice to have you back. Nice that you have power again. How was your week?
Yes. It was interesting. I made purchases. So this past week, roughly a week and a half or so, I bought a new Nintendo Switch and a PlayStation 4 Pro. Now, I know what you're thinking on the PlayStation 4 Pro. That seems dumb, considering the PlayStation 5 is going to be a thing, like probably in the next 5 to 6 months or so. But let me explain. Let me give some context. So the Switch, I wanted another Switch because I want to mod my current one. And once it's modded, though, I don't want to ever go online with it because Nintendo will absolutely ban that system and ban you from purchasing like anything on the eShop.
Yep.
So that has to strictly stay offline. So I need a legit Switch to play all my physical games, go online on their online service, and yada, yada, yada. So I decided to hop on PlayAsia and buy the Animal Crossing New Horizons edition of the Switch or whatever. Because truth be told, the yen to Canadian dollar is pretty dang even compared to the US dollar and the Canadian dollar, which is a total shit show. Our dollar's like 70 cents right now to the American dollar. So trying to buy a Switch off like Amazon.com or like somewhere in the States is no bueno. Mm-hmm. But as it turns out, it really kind of wasn't really worth it for Japan either because the import fee and duty was like an extra like $200. So yeah, that was nice to finally. And not only that, like the guy came to the door and then told me all this, and I was like, all right, I'll give you my credit card. We'll do the tap stuff. Can't take credit card. He had to I had to pay with debit. So then he has to go back to his truck and grabs a machine that's probably been touched by like a billion other people. And anyways, so I have both of those now. The Switch is great. I love it. It's gorgeous. I love the green teal of the Joy-Con and the baby blue. It's perfect. I put my Tom Nook amiibo next to it and everything. I love it. The PlayStation 4 Pro, though, is a Death Stranding edition of the PlayStation 4 Pro with its funky handprints and stuff all over it.
Okay.
Now, for context on why I bought that, I'm buying a 4K TV next month, but that's not all. As nice as it is to be able to dabble in 4K next month and try out maybe The Last of Us 2 and stuff like that and play around with HDR and kind of wrap my brain around all that and figure out how to capture that stuff that hopefully won't eat up my hard drive space. My mom really, really fucking loves Red Dead Redemption 2. I showed it to her back at like Christmas or holiday season or whatever, 2018, at a family get-together. I was just trying to show it off to my cousins because they wanted to see it. They barely have time to play video games, but they wanted to check it out. But my mom was like infatuated by this game.
Really?
For further context, she's pretty like PC and tech savvy. She's worked in a like customer service. She's Microsoft certified, yada yada. She's been doing that for like 20 plus years. She just retired in January. So she's always been into like PC games. Like she played World of Warcraft for like 2 years. But in recent years, she's kind of fallen off. She's just gone into like Facebook games and she plays the Wii every now and then. But Red Dead Redemption 2 was like the first game that kind of like captivated her, kind of like renewed that interest in games again. And a lot of that has to do with she loves Westerns. She loved this show called Little House on the Prairie. I don't know. I remember seeing it as a kid and being bored out of my mind by it. So anyways, she loves Westerns. She loves this game. And so I told her, like, when the PlayStation 5 comes out, I will just give you the PlayStation 4 with a copy of Red Dead 2, and you can go at it. So for the past year and a half now, I get like the occasional text message or Facebook message just asking if I bought a PS5 because she saw a PlayStation 5 headline and just assumed I bought one and own one now, even though we don't even know what that looks like. And so between all of this, between having some excess of money from like, working full time lately and not really buying anything for months on end outside of groceries, and also getting an income tax return and a COVID-19 GST check thing in the mail, I was like, you know what? I'm going to buy a PS4 Pro, and I'm just going to give her this PS4. So I treated myself to a new Switch and a new PS4 Pro, and right as I'm done Podtoid today, I'm going over there in the next hour, and I'm gonna surprise her. I'm just casually going over there and say, yeah, I'll bring the PS4 with play Red Dead 2. She doesn't know I'm giving it to her, so I'm gonna hopefully surprise her with that.
That's a good gift. And I will have to say, I think one of the reasons, an additional reason why your mom may be fascinated with Red Dead Redemption 2 is if this show is any indication, you talked about it nonstop for 4.5 months.
Yeah, that is true. I did talk about it a lot. I still haven't gotten that platinum trophy either, so get back at that someday.
I do love the idea of you using a COVID check to buy this, because that's exactly what like a 9-year-old would do with their if they received a COVID check.
No, yeah, that was basically my logic. Like, oh, video game money.
I just like the way that it's like he bought a super limited edition Switch and this super limited edition PS4, and it's like
fair.
And it's like time to go back to my mansion and eat my lobster.
To be fair, I was shocked to find those on PlayAsia, just like in stock in general. I was like, maybe I'd jump on this. So like I debated it. I sat there being like, I can maybe wait, but I figured, like I said, my mom just retired in January, and she had all these plans to like go down to the States and visit some family, go around Canada and visit some family. Now she can't. She's just been at home going fucking stir crazy.
Yeah.
So I figured like the best gift to give her would be, this. So the mixture of all of that and like seeing these super limited edition consoles just available on PlayAsia, I was like, fuck it, I might as well just pull the trigger on this. And not only that, but I did the hard drive transfer from my normal PlayStation to this Pro, which includes PT on it. So I have a Death Stranding PlayStation 4 Pro with PT on it. So worst case scenario, if I'm like, fuck this, I did go sell it on eBay and probably get my money back and then some. So
yeah,
I'm hoping if the PlayStation 5 is like super backwards compatible with the PS4, you can just do that as well. But we'll find out, I guess.
So you had a good week then. Your week's been good.
Yeah.
Outside of the surprise.
Anything new, but I've dabbled in new systems.
Dude, like, don't ask me how my week's been because I can't follow that. Like,
no, I don't think any of us can follow. I mean, I told you, Chris, I can't remember the last time I had human contact with someone, so I definitely can't follow that.
It's been a fun week.
Well, we do have a good show for you, and thanks for sharing all that, Dan. Before we get into everything and start talking about games, I wanted to start us off with a little bit of good news this week. It's a pretty shitty time in the world right now, and so I'd really like to shine a light on someone who's doing some good work. And today I want to tell you about Utah mother Mindy Vincent. She's a supporter of the Utah Harm Reduction Coalition, which helps drug addicts and those with HIV, something I imagine that will have its funding completely wiped out once our ongoing financial collapse really gets started. Recently, Mindy posted a picture of herself on Facebook with a facial mask that she made herself, and it proved to be so popular, people started asking her to make one for them, and her son suggested that they sell masks and donate them to the UHRC. And so far, she has sold enough masks to raise $56,000 for this nonprofit, and she says she has enough material to probably double that amount of money. So here's a woman who just made this mask that she really liked. Other people saw it, really liked it, and she turned it into a way to help out a nonprofit, it's just really cool this time.
That's great.
And if you're wondering why Mindy's masks are so popular, there are a lot of theories out there, but I'd wager it's because they're all covered in dicks.
I knew it. I fucking knew it.
This started off like really like, oh, that's really nice, and then yeah.
Yes, Mindy Vincent is selling dick masks for charity. The dicks are pretty small, so it's not like there's a big honker, or what I like to call a Michael Fassbender right on your face. In her original Facebook post, she stated that she went with the pattern because when someone would tell her mask has penises on it, that's her cue to let them know they're too close and to back the fuck up.
Yeah, that's awesome.
If you don't want dicks all over your face, Mindy has other options, including a boob mask and a vagina mask. They're going for $20 a piece, and like I said, she's still making them. It's still raising that money. I will say I'm a little disappointed when I read the headline, "Woman Makes Penis Coronavirus Mask," because I immediately thought like someone had made one of those old plague doctor masks, but instead of a beak, it's a dick. But no, it's just little penises all over your face, just to let people know they're too close if they can recognize what they're looking at.
But if you like dumped a bunch of caterpillars on someone's face, that's what that would feel like, with tiny dicks just kind of stroking your face.
Exactly the same.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought that would be just a good story to start us out with before we get talking about games. So let's go ahead and get into it. And I'm going to go ahead and start us off this week because I've been playing some Elder Scrolls Blades. If you've been paying attention, you know that the game recently made the jump from mobile to Switch. Had a little bit of trouble figuring out when it was going to come out, but it finally did. And really, I previewed this back at E3, and there isn't really much anything new to report on it. Jumping from mobile to Switch gives benefits to the game in pretty much one way and one way only, and that is with controls. It works fine with a touchscreen on your smartphone. It's just far more comfortable playing it with a controller. Being able to look around and move around at the same time just cuts down a lot of the screen swiping that happens on Android, or at least on my Android. And then, like when you're in combat, pulling off combos with the shoulder buttons is just a lot easier to do. What really doesn't benefit from the jump are the graphics. They don't look terrible, but they do look extremely dated, and you know, there's something that's made for a small 5-inch screen, and so when you see it on a big screen television, it's not that good. It's pretty bad, and it doesn't really help that everything is all brown and gray. If you're someone who likes Blades, I would recommend downloading this version because it's the best way to play it. But if you don't like Blades or you've never tried it, like there are just so many better, superior, free-to-play options out there on Switch. Like Dauntless. Remember when everyone was talking about Dauntless for 5 minutes? That was fun. Or Warframe, or Fortnite, or DC Universe Online. There are much better options to spend your time than with this. It's not terrible, but it's also not good. Not that good.
So by like dated, like how does it compare to like something like Skyrim, for example, which is like 2011 at this point?
It looks worse than Skyrim. It's far more basic than Skyrim, especially.
Yeah.
And it really doesn't help that all of the quests that you go on, the environments are randomly generated. So, you know, going into one catacomb looks like every other catacomb. They keep showing this shot of a waterfall in the trailers. There's like a dock, and then there's a waterfall behind it. What they don't really show you is that is the starting point for most of your woodland quests, and you actually have to turn around to see it. So it's not like
great.
I have yet to get to a point where I get to an end of a quest and I'm approaching this waterfall. It's always right where I start behind me, and again, it's something that when you see it on the phone, it looks kind of nice. When you see it on a what do I have, like a 48-inch television, it does not look that good at all. It looks I would say Oblivion maybe would be the closest approximation, but even that one had a lot more vibrant colors than this one has. This game only has vibrant colors when an ad pops up and there's a purple chest or something. All right, let's go ahead and move on to Charlotte. I'm very curious to hear about your thoughts on Detroit Becoming Human.
So this is not my first time playing Detroit, actually. I've played it before, and this time I'm actually not really playing it. I'm playing it with my partner's playing it, and I'm watching. Because I wasn't all that keen on replaying it myself. I didn't have that great a time with Detroit the first time round. I think when I was playing it, I was fine. But when I thought back on the experience afterwards, I was like, this did a lot of very cheap stuff. It didn't really get into the subject matters in ways it could have done that would have been a lot more sensitive and a lot more intelligent, I think. Mm-hmm. It's difficult because I've heard a lot of people be very critical of David Cage's earlier work. A lot of people are okay with Heavy Rain, but a lot of people hated Beyond Two Souls. And in many ways, I think Beyond did some stuff that Detroit sort of doesn't do so well. I feel like Beyond really did a lot of intense work on this one character. And even though the way it was handled was very clumsy at times, I just felt like swapping between these three androids who had very similar stories in many respects just wasn't really doing it for me. But it's still fun to rewatch somebody play it and make different decisions to what I made. And in fact, often it's like the decisions are different, but not deliberately. Like, so I think it's not too much of a spoiler to say basically there's a buddy sort of cop relationship between an android and a police officer. And in my playthrough, they were buddies the entire time through, and I worked hard to make sure that happened. And this time we were trying to keep them buddies, but it just didn't work for some reason, and they hate each other. So that was kind of interesting to watch, that sometimes it can be split-second accidental wrong decisions or wrong moves that just throw everything off course. So that's kind of fun to watch. But I think on the whole, I'm not super keen on Detroit. I think in many ways, a lot of David Cage's earlier work was rougher, but I think it had more of a like purity of vision, so to speak, that shone through, even if the execution was kind of rough. Whereas here it feels very much sort of, it's cleaner, but it sort of loses its way a bit. And there's also stuff that's just groan worthy because it's so on the nose. I mean, I wouldn't have picked it up unless somebody on Twitter had mentioned this, but basically there's a scene where the androids go in the back compartment of a bus, and somebody pointed out that is definitely a race back at Rosa Parks back of the bus comment. And I warned my partner about that in advance, and he was like, oh my God.
I was going to say, like, with all this like subtlety of like a sledgehammer through a plate glass window.
Exactly.
It's fun because I remember working on the video review for that. So I think I played it early, and I remember distinctly thinking at the time, like, oh my God, this is gonna blow the fuck up. People are gonna groan so fucking hard at this. And it was fun, like, going on Twitter afterwards on launch day and just seeing some of the reactions to that game.
But at least someone finally asks the question: if a robot is like a human, is it entitled to human rights? I'm just glad someone finally put pen to paper to ask that question.
It takes a brave person to ask that question right now.
Charlotte, I have a question.
Yep.
The cop and the android, were their names Holmes and Yo-Yo? At any time, if you press circle, does Yo-Yo do like a backflip in the background?
Absolutely not.
That's a shame.
There's a lot of actually like Connor and Hank. That's probably my favorite interaction, like relationship in the entire game. And Connor is my favorite out of the three androids because he'll just say, he doesn't get sarcasm at all. And there's so many setups where Hank says something sarcastic and Connor just completely flies over his head. And it's always funny just because of the actors. The actor has a very robotic execution to Connor, but it just works because Connor is such an obvious android that it just sets up a lot of quite funny moments, which is a thing that's not really been part of David Cage games before. I can't think of anything before Detroit that made me laugh. So I guess that's a bonus point. The game actually made me laugh. So
yeah. The whole time I was playing it, I kept thinking to myself, if this would have just been a buddy cop between Connor and the other guy, would have been just a better game overall, I think. Because Connor and his reactions are the highlight of that game.
Yeah.
Hey Charlotte, have you played Indigo Prophecy?
I played it up to a point where I just kept failing a certain sort of, I think I was running out of a house or something, and I kept failing it, and I was like, this is bullshit, and then I stopped.
That's fair. It is a clunky game, to put it mildly, but I would invite you to watch the third act of the game on YouTube, and then I would really, really like to hear your thoughts on that, because it's interesting, to put it mildly.
I have heard it is bizarre and the weirdest thing ever, so I will definitely go and do that.
It made me so happy because, it's batshit in the most wonderful way.
Good to know.
I need to point out, like, that just because we've not talked about Detroit on the show before, but when I first played Detroit, it was like at a trade show. And I wrote about this on the site. I don't know if you all remember, but they had a woman who was supposed to be like one of the androids manning the queue for the booth. And she was like in fucking character all day. Like, she never broke a smile. She never fucking laughed. She turned her head and then her eyes. Like she moved the eyes first, like she was scanning, and then the head. She managed the queue well. People were asking her questions, and she was answering them like she would as like a servant, as it was one of these like subservient androids. But even when people pushed her, or like kind of pushed her on the question or whatever, she would just like respond the same way. You couldn't kind of break the mask. And she was fucking amazing. That was what I took a photo of her for the article, and she was like in character for the fucking photo and stuff. It was brilliant. It was really good. And then someone on the article wrote in the comments, "Oh, I know that girl. Her name is Android." And I went, "Oh, do you know her?" Because I didn't get the fucking joke. But I still remember that actor. She was like, to keep that up all day for thousands of people, like without remotely breaking. It was fantastic. It was so good.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to you, Chris. You have something this week?
Yeah. My review went up like a week ago, but I've been playing Huntdown, which is I think the first game from this studio, Easy Trigger, and it's kind of really simple to describe because it's a 16-bit run and gun arcade shooter, and that's 16-bit more Commodore Amiga, less 16-bit, say, Genesis or SNES. Mm-hmm. And it's like a cyberpunky thing, which is obviously really popular at the moment, but it really encapsulates this idea of what cyberpunk was like in the late 80s. Very much The Running Man, Total Recall, Blade Runner, that kind of thing.
Hey, Chris, I have a question for you. Great review, the game looked good, and maybe I missed it. But why is the game called Huntdown?
Huntdown is basically, I believe it's kind of, there's a couple of reasons. I think one, it's kind of because you play these bounty hunters, and Huntdown is essentially their nightly job. They go on the hunt down, that kind of thing. You know, it's like, and secondly, I think they've taken that name because that sounds like a film from the 80s, and I think that's part of it as well. It does. Because the whole game's kind of drowning in this aesthetic of 80s cinema. But it's very much like the games that it most reminds me of are Judge Dredd for the SNES, the Terminator for the Sega CD, and more than anything, Elevator Action Returns for the Sega Saturn, which is a really good run and gun game, one of the best. And you basically make your way through these districts, and you run and gun your way through these multi-platform levels, and you duck in and out of boxes and down darkened doorways and take people out with this huge arsenal of weaponry that's kind of you just pick up as you play. And then at the end of each section, you take on a boss character, usually tough as fuck boss character, that are all kind of very gimmicky in terms of their visual design. And in terms of all the fights, really unique. So one of them's like a sniper on a jetpack. Another one is like a greaser on like a flying motorbike with like his Valley Girl girlfriend cheering him on for the entire fight. Another guy is like a taxman who just sits in his office taking a phone call for the duration of the whole fight whilst he sends out all of these high security systems to take you on. Like, you listen to that phone call for the whole fight, which is kind of a really good juxtaposition to the chaos that's going on. I'm going to fucking cut to the chase here. Like, with this game's just fucking great. It's just fucking great. It looks awesome. The voice acting's wicked. It has an amazing soundtrack, which is like a blend of like Vangelis and very much reminds me of the Running Man soundtrack. Really, I'd say that's the film that the game most reminds me of. It's sometimes really funny. It's cathartically violent, like really over the top Hollywood ballistic violence. And it controls like a dream, and it's just really passionate in what it wants to deliver. When I reviewed Streets of Rage 4 a couple of weeks ago, I made the statement that when people are making a game and you can tell that they love the game and they're putting everything into the game, as opposed to this is my job to make this game, it comes through, it bursts through the screen. And Streets of Rage 4 does that, and this does that as well. It's not like the longest game. You only go through 4 districts, probably 2 or 3 sessions of a couple of hours each. But it should be pointed out that the game is hard as nails, and it has multiple difficulties. So if you want to kind of be a masochist and and play this game on its hardest difficulty, it might take you a little longer than that. There's 3 characters you play as. There's like a guy who's kind of like Marv from Sin City. There's like a well-spoken cyborg in a trench coat, and then there's like a Anaconda, who's my favorite character, who's kind of like a blend of Pam Grier and Snake Plissken is kind of who the character is.
That's a
Would you
dope
say
combination.
would you say that the Anaconda don't want none? Would you,
You know,
would you qualify him as that?
I've seen that joke like 4 times now, and when I get the reference, I'll fill you in.
I'll leave you to take that journey, then get back to me, friend.
Like I've written about this game a couple of times before, and that crops up in the comments every time, and I'm like, yeah. But, yeah. It's also just like, at the moment, it's like $17 or something like that. It's an Epic Game Store exclusive on PC, and that £10 voucher offers on at the moment, so you can get this game for less than $10. It's really fucking obnoxious. It's really violent. I think I put in my review, it's the kind of game that like you enjoy it while it punches you in the face and tells your mum to go fuck herself, and that's kind of what this game is. It plays great. It has everything that you remember from that genre, but it really does bring it up to speed with the modern era. It has a load of great references in, but it's not fucking Seth MacFarlane. You remember this. It's kind of just a little more casual, a little more subtle than that. Stuff like it's got like a minigun in it, and the minigun's called Old Painless. Stuff, but it's not like kind of beating you over the head with these references. They're just kind of... they're slipped in there. And ironically, that Old Painless scene from Predator, when he's like mowing down the forest, the kind of satisfaction of that sequence is what the gunplay feels like throughout this game. That's kind of the weight and the catharsism that this game has. So it's unashamed in what it is. It's tough as fuck. It has local co-op, which makes it all the better. If it had online co-op, or if it had one more district, I probably would have pushed it to a 9. It got an 8 in the end. But I'll go on record as saying this game's probably as good as Streets of Rage 4, even though it won't get the same level of attention. Yeah. It's a little rougher around the edges. It's got there's some language problems in the game, like some kind of grammar issues. And like I say, it's kind of short. But... you know, I've been playing video games since the 80s, and I've got no problem with like really big, deep adventures that are really cinematic. I don't have a problem with your Resident Evil 4s and your God of Wars and, you know, your Last of Us or your Detroits. I don't mind those games existing, and sometimes I play them and I do enjoy them. But fucking hell, like having Streets of Rage and Huntdown come out within 3 weeks of each other, this has basically been my favorite month for gaming for something like 15 fucking years.
Hell
wow.
Yeah.
Well,
because it's like, you know, for the first time in a long time, it's 2 top of the line games that you could just kind of put on and get playing immediately and then turn them off as soon as you want to turn them off. There are so many games now that when you sit down, you kind of know you have to have 2 hours free. Or an hour free, or you're ready to end the session, but you've got to get through, like, I'll get to the end of the stage and then I'll watch the cinematic before the next stage. And I don't have a problem with any of that stuff. Some of my favorite games are those kind of games. But holy shit, to play 2 games that are just colourful and play really well and are arcadey, and you can fire them up, be in the action within 20 seconds, and then turn them off whenever you want. It's just refreshing, that's all. I highly recommend, if you like video games, you go out and you buy Huntdown. But there is a challenge there, so just be aware of that before you go in.
All right, let's go ahead and wrap this up with Occams, who is going to tell us about From Beyond.
Now I don't know if I want to talk about From Beyond, because it's kind of a boner killer way of introducing it. But okay, all right, let's do this. So, From Beyond, we have the classic 80s triumvirate. We've got Stuart Gordon directing, we have Jeffrey Combs starring, and we have a Lovecraft story. So if you've seen Reanimator, Bride of Reanimator, or anything like that, you know what you're getting into. This is a great film. So basically, There's two scientists. One's the main scientist, one's his assistant. Main scientist has developed this resonator and it stimulates the pineal gland, which makes you horny, controls all your sex drive. And when it stimulates it, you can kind of see into another dimension that kind of coexists on top of our current dimension. Fun story. What's in the dimension? Horrible shit. Eels, flesh creatures, just terrible monsters. So the guy turns on the device. The main scientist does. Jeffrey Combs is like, turn it off. There's like bad shit. Eels are like literally eels are attacking me. And the main scientist, Dr. Pretorius, gets killed. The cops think that Jeffrey Combs did it. Jeffrey Combs is kind of nuts now because he saw a bunch of eels, saw his main scientist buddy get killed. And so he's in an asylum. And then this psychiatrist and her detective friend come in to interview him. They end going back to the house to like unsolve the mystery of what happened because the cops are like, well, we can't really find evidence that he killed him, but he's the only one there, blah, blah, blah. It's a great movie. It's silly. There's some good body horror, some great practical effects, great 80s boobs. Barbara Crampton, just a personal favorite of mine growing up. It's a fun, dumb Lovecraft movie. I can't recommend it enough. You know, if you like Reanimator, if you like Bride of Reanimator, anything like that, you can't go wrong with this one. So that is From Beyond. It's a good short story too.
Nice.
Yeah. Now, Chris, have you seen Invasion USA?
Oh yeah.
Okay, good.
Like a bunch of times.
Yeah, I'd never seen it before, and it's one of the few canon films I haven't watched. And I put it on a whim last night or night before. I don't know, all the days are linked together now. But it's Chuck Norris. He's a retired CIA guy, and this is so like cookie cutter plot for 80s action. He has to stop the invasion of the United States by like 40 dudes. I counted maybe. It is a combination of the Cubans and Russians, which were like the two best villains in the 80s, are going to somehow destabilize the United States by taking over. They call it Miami. I think it's actually like Fort Pierce, Florida, is where they shot most of this. For a canon film, it's got a fairly decent budget. There's a lot of like tanks, and everyone has a grenade launcher. I kind of tweeted about this when I was watching it, of like how everyone has grenades for no reason. Chuck Norris is just in his like jean shirt, like denim shirt, and his Levi's the entire movie, including when he's sleeping. The bad guy is wearing khakis and his button down when he's sleeping, which I love. It's an insane movie, but I started to notice that as I was watching it, there are a bunch of parallels between what's going on now with the COVID and this film, because there are scenes in the movie where these people, like the invasion has begun, so it's martial law and they're at the grocery store, and the guy at the grocery store is like, we have a limit on items, and people are like rioting about this. I'm like, oh fuck, man, like I can relate to that, and that's unfortunate. It is a painfully violent film, like a surprising amount of violence for an 80s action movie, which is saying something. Like there's a bit where the main bad guy and his buddy drive through this suburban neighborhood, and they take out an anti-tank rocket with those like big long tubes. You've seen them in all the 80s movies. Oh, yeah. And just start blowing up people's houses in the suburb with no rhyme or reason. Like I rewinded the scene because I thought, oh, are they like, maybe they're going after like a CIA agent, or they're taking out somebody who's, you know, in government to like destabilize stuff. No, they're just imagine going to the suburbs and start blowing up houses. It is so gratuitously violent and just, it's insane. It's very fun. Chuck Norris comes off as a sociopath, which I guess was better than being the homophobe he turned out to be. It's a fun movie. It's ridiculous. I cannot recommend it enough. Chris, I was watching this, and you were in my head and my heart, buddy. You've seen it a lot more than I have. What are your thoughts on it?
I like it a lot. It's not my favorite of the canon kind of run of action movies, but there are a couple of things in it that I think are really good. I really like Richard Lynch, who's like the villain, who's just like such a fucking comic book character in that film. I really like the idea of, because obviously games like Modern Warfare 2 also run the idea of like the Russians invading America. The idea that the suburbs and the streets and the shopping malls have been invaded by the Russians. But how they respond in like that game is like the military mobilizers, and then and they hunker down and they take the Russians on in Washington. This is literally like the whole of North America gets invaded by like these guys in trucks, and just Chuck Norris is going to cover every state pretty much.
Yeah, there's a bit where like his CIA operative is talking to Chuck Norris, and he's like, "Way to get Drago," or whatever. It doesn't matter. Or Nico, and he's like, grab the dude, and he's like, "For every one I stop, 100 happen." I'm like, yeah, no shit, because you're one fucking dude, and we saw 20 minutes earlier, 40 guys in a truck, every goddamn one of them has a grenade launcher. Is just gonna go off and fuck off in the suburbs and murder everybody. But it's an insane movie. And you mentioned Richard Lynch. He's the kind of guy you see in a film and you go, oh, him. And the same with a guy named Billy Drago, who is criminally underused in this film for like 2 seconds. By the way, Richard Lynch, bad guy, his like MO for assassinating people, he's 2 ways of doing it: standing about 6 feet away from you and shooting you with a rocket launcher, which happens multiple times in the film, or shooting you in the dick. Because he definitely kills like 2 separate dudes, like intentionally, by shooting, like putting the barrel of the gun down their pants and shooting them in the dick, which I thought was just really, really like, that's a character choice I can respect.
I think that the thing that stands out the most from Invasion USA, I think to anyone really who watches it, is just the film kind of ends with Norris, like the final kind of shootout has Norris with these little Uzis that he's kind of got wedged into his armpits.
Yeah.
And he's got these little holsters for them. And he's just kind of just like, brr, brr, like moving around it, but he never kind of moves them from his armpits. So it's almost like he's this robot that's got these little fucking Uzis installed in, and it's on the cover of like the VHS and the poster, and it's kind of the enduring image from the film is him with these like tiny little Uzis stuck in his armpits. Little boring little fact. It's not a boring fact. It's a great fact. That suburb that they blow up in the movie. They had carte blanche to blow that suburb up because they were actually clearing the houses out for like a shopping mall. So they were just like, if you just want to shoot these houses with rocket launchers, you can go ahead and do it because we're going to bulldoze these houses anyway.
Wasn't that the same thing with the mall they had the big shootout in where they drove trucks through? I think that's the same thing. And I would say that with the way Norris held these little Uzis, and they're like almost like tassels, the way he would maneuver them and shoot them, it's the same thing. If you've ever been to a burlesque show and seen the woman with the pasties, but they have the tassels, it was the same motion of him. Like he had Uzis on his nipples rather than tassels.
That sounds like a less pleasurable show to be watching, especially if you're on the receiving end. I thought I've seen Invasion USA, but what you've described is not something I have seen. So clearly there is another 80s Chuck Norris movie that I have seen that I just must have been confusing it for. And now that I think about it, I don't think it takes place in the United States. So it would have been really bad for me to confuse these two.
Are you thinking of Missing in Action? Is this
know.
like a Vietnam? Is this like a Vietnam?
Yeah, that's it. It's the Vietnam
Missing,
one.
Yeah. Missing in Action is like.
Yeah.
That's a film. Missing in Action is a film that was so bad that they shot Missing in Action and the sequel at the same time, and then released the sequel first because they thought the first film was so shit it was going to kill business for the sequel, and then made the original movie a prequel.
And that's great. I'd like to point out too that both of these films I watched on my PlayStation 4 on these apps, Vudu, VUDU, and Tubi, TUBI. They were free. Now, they do have some ads that run, which can be annoying, but you can't really beat free.
This is Podtoid.
All right, that is it for games, which means it is time for the news.
This is the news.
And this was a particularly busy week, especially when compared to, the last month or so. A lot happened from Nintendo. We got a surprise announcement of a new Paper Mario game called Paper Mario: The Origami King, and people are already complaining about its characters and combat. There's also a rumored Pikmin 3 port that is supposedly going to be announced in the next coming weeks. Epic Games showed off Unreal Engine 5, which is slated for release in 2021 and will supposedly scale for current generation consoles and mobile. So good luck to Panic Button and whatever Bethesda has them port to Switch. And then we also learned that Mafia Trilogy is coming out. And Charlotte, I'm sure you're happy about that one.
Very happy, indeed.
Which is your favorite of the 3 games? I'm just interested.
I mean, like, I've been hyping it up, but actually, I'm just a massive fan of Mafia 3, and I've always wanted to go back and play the old ones. When the rumors started swirling around, I was like, should I go on eBay and find Mafia 2? And then I realized Mafia 2 is probably going to be part of the announcement. So I'm just really excited to play them for the first time because I thought Mafia 3 was fantastic. So at the moment, my favorite is Mafia 3. Apparently, Mafia 2 is already coming out. The rumor is next week, like that the announcement is going to basically be and it's out.
Yeah, it's really weird because it seems that Mafia 1 and Mafia 2 are getting separate individual releases, but then there's also this trilogy pack that's coming. So I'm not really 100% sure of what's going on and why they're doing it this way. What I do know is that the screenshots I saw of the Mafia 1 remake are gorgeous. Like, that cityscape is amazing.
I think it's because the difference is that Mafia 2 is just going to be a remaster, whereas Mafia Definitive Edition is going to be more along the lines of a remake, and that's why that's coming out later. So I think is that August or is it October? I think August. Yeah.
I think a couple of months ago as well, Mafia 3 was a PlayStation Plus game. So maybe they're like, we shouldn't put this out as an individual release because there's a good chance every PS4 owner's got it.
But yeah, those were some of the big stories of the week, but we're actually going to start off this news segment with Tony Hawk. Jeff Keighley, his E3 replacement Summer Game Fest kicked off with the announcement that Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 are being remade for Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and PC. A few years ago, you might remember Robomoto did a pretty poor HD port of the original game to consoles. This time it is Vicarious Visions handling the duties, and I know this development team from their work with the Guitar Hero franchise back when I still owned a Wii. They're mostly known for their ports and kind of assisting other development teams on titles. It also did the Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy a few years ago, which got very high marks, even though it is that game is difficult for me, so I'll just leave it like that. I'm a bit more excited with Vicarious Visions being involved with this. God, that is hard to say. Than I was Robomoto. But Occams, I'm sure you'll agree with me. Isn't it nice to be looking forward to a Tony Hawk's game again?
God damn, it is, man. I was so excited because, and it's part nostalgia. Sure. I 100% admit that. But dude, those were just good fucking games. They were just well made. They were fun. The music is iconic. You could look at the comments on those articles, and half the people are just posting lyrics to Superman, and you go right back there. So I'm very, very excited to play them again. I look forward to not being really as good as I was when I was 18 or so, 19, whenever those came out. I'm stoked, to put it mildly.
For me, the Tony Hawk series has always been like the franchise I would point at as this is a series that is just absolute 100% pure fun in terms of video games. Like, I don't think it's my favorite video game franchise, but it's certainly the one that I would comfortably say I had the most fun with because it is just such a brilliant, easy design of just doing some skateboard tricks, pulling them off, seeing if you can get big combos, coming back, doing it again, see if you can get bigger combos. It's just it's endlessly fun, and I can't name another series since that hit that's really have made me feel the same way.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time with the first 3 games trying to build bigger combos. We would even try to link up like with certain songs playing to really get the momentum going. The sense, the flow of it, your sense of motion, everything, it was just so intense and fun. And I mean, it was a great series, and I'm really happy, as I am with a lot of these remasters. I know there's a certain cynical take on these, and I get that to a degree. But when I think about these games coming back, since I was there for them when they were new, I get excited for the folks out there who never played these and will get to for the first time, and maybe because of it, they're going to enjoy these games. Maybe they'll discover bands like Goldfinger or the Misfits. and that or Dead Kennedys rather, or just listen to the Misfits too. It's that makes me happy too. It's just a bit of an older gamer, or older in terms of, I guess, these remasters. So yeah, it's a good time.
I think the thing that I always distinctly remember about Tony Hawk's skateboard, as it was called over here, Tony Hawk skateboarding, as if they were worried Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, you wouldn't know what that was. I don't know. The thing I remember about Tony Hawk's skateboarding was like everyone was playing it, even if they didn't give a shit about skateboarding or sports games, or everyone I know who had a PlayStation bought it and thought it was amazing.
Yeah.
It really kind of appealed to all audiences, even those who had no interest in the sport. And that's kind of just testament to how like ruthlessly addictive and how good the physics were in it, which is why I guess at the end of the day, all the people who are kind of on tenterhooks about this game all just want to get their hands on it because it's all in how it feels.
Yeah.
But I did read that apart from the fact they've built this game kind of from the ground up, there's this story they said in the interview that they took the original code for the physics and they found a way to like bend and shape that code so it could just be inserted into their engine. So rather than write the code from scratch, they've kind of done their very best to just like cram the old code into it to make it kind of as 1-1 as possible.
The mixture of reading that in the interview and also seeing it on Jablinski Games when you're watching Jack Black play it sold me. Because initially I was really worried that it was going to be like the 2012 thing with the fuck awful physics remastered and re-released and just pumped out there, but thankfully it's not. It looks gorgeous, and reading the interview and talking about importing that physics engine into their own engine, plus then seeing it in action on Jack Black's fucking YouTube channel was pretty wild.
Chris, I will say that I was one of those people who could not give a shit about the sport of skateboarding. I've watched maybe an hour of the X Games in my life, but god damn it, I owned Pro Skater 1, 2, 3. I don't think I owned 4, but then I jumped over to the DS ones. Needless to say, I played a lot of skateboarding games without giving the slightest fuck about skateboarding.
Right.
Exact same.
Yeah, and some games are just really, really good at doing that. I mean, like, I have never, ever driven a missile-firing car through Paris, but I had all the Twisted Metal games.
I will say my freshman year in college, in my eternal bid to make a new personality for myself, I did decide to try and become someone who does skateboard. So I spent $150 on a skateboard, ended up twisting my ankle within 5 minutes, never rode it again. Oh, I was so bad with money back then.
Like I am now.
Yes.
I dabbled in skateboarding. I once to do a kickflip. That was about the peak of my physical capabilities. But I'm really hoping that like this creates maybe a resurgence, the mix of like Stater XL, that other like state-inspired game that's coming out, mixture of all of this. Somebody at fucking EA goes, yeah, we should probably not sit on State 4 anymore. Because as much as I love Tony Hawk, I'd be so goddamn happy for a State 4.
I'll take the fantasy of Tony Hawk over the realism of Skate any day.
I like the mixture of both.
Can I give a slight dissenting opinion to what you've all just said?
Of course, the girl doesn't like skateboarding.
I used to love skateboarding. I used to watch, I forget what it was called, the channel in the UK where all the extreme sports was on, but I used to watch that for about 2 years. I used to watch that all the time because the Tony Hawk games got me into skateboarding, and also SSX got me into snowboarding. Where I'm a little bit not sure about this is because I came to the games late. So my first entry into the series that I played was Underground 2. And that game was just like, it was half skateboarding and half Bam Margera being Bam Margera. So it's like, to me, it's bound together with the early 2000s CKY sort of Jackass sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't think it was really doing that with Pro Skater quite as much as it went completely off the rails with Underground 2. So it's like not my my nostalgia is around those games and not around Pro Skater. So I'm really happy for everybody else, but I don't think I'm going to be picking this up because for me it's incorrigibly bound with Underground 2, American Wasteland, Project 8, and I kind of want to like have my nostalgia hang on that, and I want to kind of also leave it in that time because I don't really want to sit and play a game where like they're hawking loogies at Phil Margera, but at the same time that was amazing, and you know what I mean. So it's kind of like
sure.
You have the nostalgia around Pro Skater, I have the nostalgia around Phil Margera getting his ass kicked.
And see, I feel like those games, when by then I'd long left the series because to me those games had nothing to do with why I wanted to play a Tony Hawk game, and I certainly can understand your nostalgia for that if that's kind of where you came in with it. But those were less about the skating and more about the personalities involved in the production, and I just couldn't care. The Jackass movies were fun at the time, and I can appreciate the show for what it was, but like as a game, no, that didn't do it for me. I wanted like the skate tricks, the as CJ said, the fantasy of it, and then the music. So I do you think you'll play it? Like if you were given the opportunity, would you play it?
Yeah, I'd give it a try. It's not like I'd shove it away if somebody offered it to me. I don't think I'd spend 60 euros for it, so to speak. It's also part of it is that I've gone back and tried to play. I think particularly SSX. Like I used to be so good at SSX. Like if we would had the online leaderboards back then that we have now, I think I would have been pretty good at the game, relatively speaking. But I've tried it recently and I just don't have the timing for those sorts of games anymore. I suck at Skate so much when I've tried to play it recently. So I don't know if it would be something where I'd get frustrated and put it down fairly quickly. So I'd play it, but I don't think I'd go out of my way to play it. But I'm super excited for everybody else. I can see why people are hyped.
This is Podtoid.
We are just about out of time, but before we go, Occams, we have a community shout out this week.
So for community shout out, Tater Chimp celebrated a birthday this week, and now that I'm saying the word Tater Chimp out loud for the first time, that's really fun to say. Tater Chimp, I like that. And Neuronium, kind of continuing his happy fun times, apparently got his MLIS degree, and I haven't checked with him, but MLIS, at least in my world, means Masters of Library and Information Science. And Dead Moon, the community discuss guru, community badass, and a good fella all around, fucking aced his semester. I believe it was all A's and a B, which is pretty fucking awesome, man. So yeah, and so just a big shout out to him for that. That's a tough thing to do, especially given the current situation. So kudos to you, man.
Yeah, he works really hard on that, but he also like does a lot of stuff for the site, and yeah. So I'm really stoked for him. It's great news.
Yeah. A lot of the back end issues that get solved are because of him. So.
Great job.
I think the only time I got those grades that good in college was when I had nothing but gym in 4 of my classes. So, yeah, very good job. That is it for this episode of Podtoid. On behalf of Charlotte, Chris, Dan, Occams, and myself, thank you for listening, and don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Podbean, or to the Destructoid YouTube channel.